more than 200% increased global area of effect. Every single time we automatically cast our Frost Shield, based on our cast on damage taken, we create a Thunderdome, so to speak. As always, the time codes will be in the description box below, as well as any relevant links. But this is my Hierophant, Forbidden Rite of Soul Sacrifice, Mind Over Matter, Try Recoup, Self-Cast build. It's experimental, to say the least. Can it do all content? Yes. Can it do Ubers? If you're good, it does require a little bit of a skill check compared to just standing there and just taking it all in. You do have to avoid the mechanics. How dare I know. Can it do all map mods? Yes, every single map mod is pretty much safe with the exception of the one that is the recovery-based one, because we are recoup-based. So if we have no recoup, we have no build. Is it worth the investment? No, it's not. We're going to talk about what I have done to solve the issues and how the build works and all that, and how it all fits together. But I have a hell of a comparison to this build, which is of course my Pathfinder Forbidden Rite that is poison based. And even though that has been getting gutted for the last 2-3 leagues, I still think in terms of like damage output, quality of life, speed, and tank, overall I would consider that to be a more gracefully built that has been put together. Because this one has been quite curious to solve. The recoup alone is a massive concern, because we take far more damage than the Forbidden Rite, the regular Forbidden Rite would give anybody. For those who do not know, Forbidden Rite of Soul Sacrifice is different in the sense that it doesn't cost you mana to cast, it costs life, which means you also can't do Chaos Inoculation shenanigans. And not only that, it takes a big chunk based off your energy shield and does the damage to you in form of chaos. Now, this is not inherently a problem, but because chaos is scaled of energy shield, or the chaos damage you're taking, and energy shield can be pushed far higher than life, which of course you would want to do due to the increases of damage you may gain from that. The more energy shield you have, the more damage you do, but also the more damage you take. We do have some tank though. You saw me tank a DD earlier. You saw me tank some AoE effects on the ground. So there is definitely some good tank that we have been able to facilitate. There's some good damage we've been able to get out of it. Bosses pretty much die. The health bars and Ubers are moving gracefully, as long as you can stand still and line it all up. Because we have our Thunderdome, we have our Wither that we have to cast, we have to keep up our buffs. But aside from that, it's just like press right click and victory. But more about that in just a second in the gearing section and gemming section. But yes, do I believe this build has been a success? Technically. I just don't think it is as graceful as I possibly could have built it with infinite budget. But if you need an infinite budget to make a build graceful, is it really a good build? I let that for you to decide, depending on your own budget, especially with Magic finding this league. But it's been a curious exercise. I am, however, excited to have a refound kinship with the Hierophant, or with the Templar in general. It has been a good exercise in building and problem solving. So it has made me a better player, but I do believe there are better alternatives out here. So if you want to play Forbidden Rite of Sacrifice, you might want to go, of Soul Sacrifice, you might want to go cast on crit, because self-cast may be problematic. Problematic or not, there are a lot of fun elements to this build. The massive increased area of effect, more than 200%. We have massive explosions for very cheap this league. And of course, other elements that make the build very good to play. But you have to ask yourself, is it worth the investment to do so self-castingly? Because cast and crit might be better, but perhaps you can find a better way. But this is the way that I have done it. We are dealing with a level 94, well, Hierophant, of course, which is integral to the way that I've built it. And let's go a little bit above, we'll talk a little bit about the gear, right? It is the basic power charge stacker. We have the Void Battery. Of course, in there we have the Divine Blessing, Inspiration, Zealotry combo, which we have on E. On our helm, we have the Mind Spiral Eventail Helmet. This gives us one of the versions of Recoup for mana. It also gives us a hell of a lot of energy shield based on our mana. And also it gives us a lot of mana. And with the correct corruption, that's another power charge, which is very comfortable. You can get a double corrupted as well if you have more currency for more mana availability, which means more tank and God knows what else. Now, Enlightened, level 3. You could have gone level 4 here. Purity of Elements, very, very powerful. Arctic Armor, if we stand still, which is always what happens when you are casting. Just more defense, because physical mitigation is important, and this build lacks it, sadly, as do most energy shield builds. We also have Discipline. Now we get a little freaky. We have a Malachite's Loop with a double corrupt for more energy shield, but also a level 23 Determination, which we have connected to an Arrogance, which is why our life is so reserved. We also have a level 1 Clarity to trigger our Watcher's Eye, and a Vitality to trigger our Watcher's Eye and also help facilitate the early ramp. Because, yeah, the Forbidden Rite of Soul Sacrifice costs life. We only have 396 life, and although we can have recoup scale to a point where it just fills up infinitely so we can just cast infinitely fast, it takes a second, and Vitality here helps with that. Just for terms of quality of life, this is just not something that is necessary. I just felt it smoothed out the overall feel of the actual build. Another problem solved, so to speak. We are also running a Badge of the Brotherhood with infused power charge after all. My proudly crafted resistance ring that I still have to slap resistances on, but we are pretty decently done doing on resistances, so I didn't feel the need to do so. In a perfect world, perhaps I would have removed all res and then added strength, which would have given me another point back. But other than that, I think it's a pretty good ring. Rarity could be energy shield for more value there too, but rarity is pretty good this league, so no problems there. We have an actual stat-based ring with a little bit of chaos res, which is mandatory if you don't have a Watcher's Eye that gives you chaos res. We have some mana regen life for the unveil, and some crafted energy shield. So a basic ring, but nonetheless quite nicely. A corrupted ivory tower. If you have a double corrupted, it means of course more damage, or maybe some other wonderful corruption that you can add in here. More life, more God knows what else. Forbidden Rite of Soul Sacrifice, the star of the show. Naturally combined that to a power charge on crit, because we are a power charge stacker. Awakened Void Manip. Corruption failed, sadly, but nonetheless +1 level. Greater Volley Support. It's a little better than GMP due to the less projectile damage being lower. But if you have an Awakened GMP, you want that, because due to the massive AoE that we have, if people are somewhat grouped up, we can fire additional projectiles and they hit everybody, giving us far more than the expected 5 projectiles in terms of single target damage, which is really, really fun. Awakened Spell Echo. We can finally use it because we are playing hit-based and not poison. So we're still leveling this, but yes, the Spell Echo is just incredible. Lots of cast speed, but also double damage chance. It is spicy this league, but worth it. And of course, increased critical damage support. Just since we are crit-based anyway, getting more crit multiplier is always very nice. The Kalissa's Grace. We have a double corrupt energy shield and despair. That's how we get our curses. Just a nicely rolled glove. We have a cast when damage taken support here. As always, if you hurt ourselves, due to the fact that Forbidden Rite does count as a hit, you can actually see it triggers everything. This allows us to get more hits in, which is good for our Watcher's Eye. If we had a different Watcher's Eye, we probably wouldn't be running this. We might be running an Immortal Coal or something on left click, who knows. We have Despair. This is for our Jewel. This gives us Wither. Every 10 seconds we have to recast this. We don't actually use the curse in and of itself. And then we also have Frostblink of Wintry Blast, which is the new Frostblink, which allows us to do the teleporting around, of course, that you have seen. Speaks for itself. Allows us to make up for not having a Quicksilver and having basically no movement, so we're just blinking around. I did try using this with a Spell Echo, but I kept rubber banding. Now with Spell Echo, it definitely feels better. It feels a lot faster, almost instantaneously. But the rubber banding drove me up a wall, so I just removed it and opened it up for another cast on Damage Link to release Socket Pressure. So it is what it is. Graven Secret, it is a double corrupt rarity intelligence one. Not needed. You would prefer here Energy Shield, obviously. But the power charges giving you absorption charges and then still benefiting from power charges due to our next item is just incredibly powerful, because this allows us to get like over 100% energy hits or elemental damage hits taken as recoup, which is incredible. Right? We have 12 power charges, 12% of elemental damage taken as energy shield, giving us a total of 144% recoup of all elemental hits, which is just incredible, right? Now, this allows us to still benefit from power charges because this overrides the absorption charges, preventing power charges from happening. So we can have both the power charges and the wonderful absorption charges and power charges combined. I have a video about that. If you don't believe me, it works wonders. On top of that, we have Arcane Surge, just level 20, since we're also always benefiting from Arcane Surge, and we have a lot of scaling on Arcane Surge. This is quite powerful. Cast when damage taken, slightly down leveled to trigger Mana Bond, level 1. Since Mana Bond is percentage mana skilled, we can trigger the Kalissa's Grace more consistently for base crit +2. And then also a Frost Shield, which is of course where the Thunderdome comes in. And that's kind of the build in and of itself. We are using the expected Bottle Faith with a rare or unique hit because we are a crit build. Dying Sun is just very nice, more AoE, more projectiles, makes mapping even better. Not needed, by the way. You can just do whatever the hell you want. Maybe even what is a Taste of Hate if you are wanting to be more tanky. We have a Silver Flask with armor in this case because we also have a Basalt Flask with crit and then also a Granite Flask with cast speed. That's kind of what I'm running in terms of gear. And that's kind of how it all works together. Because if we are hurting ourselves, we can trigger the cast on damage taken. We are hurting ourselves with a lot of chaos damage, which we mitigate with our Searing Purity, which is the Flame Flesh Jewel, which turns most of it into elemental damage hits, which of course gets absorbed by our absorption charges, so we recoup energy shield through that. Since we're also hitting ourselves and doing damage to ourselves, we're also getting infinite mana. And then I'll also have some recoup on the tree. I would have preferred maybe some recoup on the rings as well, but it is what it is. And then we have that try-recoup mechanic, as well as some other benefits from the tree and the jewels there that help us sustain. So let's talk about the Atlas tree. All right, so the skill tree is a little bit of a walk and talk, so stick with me. Everything will make sense in the end. It's all connected, so you can't really just level easily into it. You need all the pieces to come together for this experimental puzzle, right? But let us start at the beginning. We have the Arcane Blessing, Conviction of Power, because we are charge stackers after all. We also pick up Divine Guidance, which starts giving us 10% out of the 50 we have for the Mind over Matter, as well as a bunch of mana and Transfiguration of Mind. Sanctuary of Thought gives us a bunch of interesting effects, including area, more energy shield, and also less mana cost of skills, which is important. The more mana we have available, the more we can tank, due to the fact that we have Mind over Matter, as well as 100% against Chaos. Although we don't take 100% of chaos damage due to something else in the tree. More about that later. But yes, that's the Ascendancy for you. And then we also have the Primalist, which is pretty straightforward. We're using the same 3 charms, which is just area of effect and maximum mana as maximum energy shield, right? It's fairly simple. I have got the cheapest ones here, 4/4. You can get 4/5s for quite a markup. But yes, 4/4s will get the job done. You can also go Explodey for 4 maximum mana, energy shield, scaling, but also Explodey. But there's a much cheaper way to do that for the cluster this league because of the way people are sleeping on it. But we'll get to that as the cluster happens. In terms of the pathing, I have decided to go as follows. We go on the top end for an easy point retribution, just value. We pick up the Mind over Matter, of course. Once you have enough unreserved mana available, I would recommend close to 1,000 at least. Down here we have a spot for our Watcher's Eye. I would recommend the Discipline one as a mandatory one. Of course, the maximum mana as extra maximum energy shield is incredibly powerful. The life recovery, not so much. I would have preferred Vitality on hit, or maybe a Purity, Elements of Purity Chaos bonus, or Chaos Resistance bonus, or perhaps some conversion for Fizz damage. But those are like super expensive. The cheapest I saw in the last week was close to 300 divines. So yeah, I'll settle with this one, right? We also pick up Foresight for the Energy Shield Mastery right here. This allows us to split our chaos damage taken a little bit into 2 different sources. which is very, very comfy because we're taking a lot of it, yet it doesn't feel like a lot, luckily enough. More about that later. I'm very happy about that. Unnatural Instinct, just for a value position right here. Look at all the wonderful things we get from it. So it's up to you if you want to do it over there. I would strongly recommend it because we get more area of effect. We get some wonderful cast speeds, which is more damage. We also have lots of mana here, a little bit of regen. So just good value for this build because everything this Unnatural Instinct has, pretty much we take, except for like the curse mods right here. Although, admittedly, it does reduce the despair and such. So, you know, it's not completely wasted. But yeah, we're mostly here for the area, the mana, and the cast speed. Going a little back up, we have Arcanist Dominion, Heart of Soul, and Deep Wisdom. These are just value nodes that scale well with what we need. Arcane Focus, because Energy Shield. Arcane Will, because mana. Because we play low life, we can do Pain Attunement, which is also the reason why we're all the way on the right here, which is a massive benefit to spell damage. We pick up Melding because it's just maximum value for life with an Ivory Tower, as well as additional energy shield scaling on that very life as well. Very lovely. And it's a very easy extra socket, which we desperately need. In this one, we have the Balance of Terror. If we cast Despair ourselves manually, we get, for 10 seconds, the ability to apply Wither with hits, which of course is very lovely, which is why we have the Despair here, as well as the Despair on hit curse, if anybody was confused about that still. Rip. Another 100 into the void. Going back to the beginning here, we have Asylum. This is a nice chaos resistance wheel, which allows us to be capped at 77. It also gives us effective curses reduced in combination with Sacred Ground that we get from Bottled Faith or, of course, Zealotry. This makes us very sturdy against any and all curses. If you do have a Watcher's Eye with chaos resistance with Purity of Elements on, you could unspec these 3 points, which is very lovely. You could also spend another point to get Corrupted Blood immunity, if that's what you want, which is very good. I am currently using Relic Ash to deal with the bleed and the Corrupted Blood, and I've never been killed by Corrupted Blood, so I feel comfortable not speccing that. But if you do, you can do so yourself. I'm also running Lunaris in case anybody was wondering. We pick up Insightfulness because this wheel is just value, mana, energy shield. It's perfect for us. We don't have to spec into Might because we have Determination on the shield, which doesn't have a strength requirement. But if you do have Determination as a skill and you want to get it to level 21, you need 159. So with this build, you could just pick up Might and then you have exactly enough, in case anybody was confused about that too. Now we get to a star of the show. We have the cluster here, which is Dark Ideation, Unspeakable Gifts, and Unwavering Evil. This is the cheapest way to get explosions, at least when I bought it. Unwavering Evil deals with the occasional stuns we take, because, of course, Forbidden Rite is a chaos skill, so it ignores everything. So you can keep killing and keep shooting. Dark Ideation normally is in the back, where now Unspeakable Gifts is, which is what makes it typically so very expensive. But, since we have, in this case, or I think there's another node in the back you want, and then Unspeakable Gifts becomes to the front. But now, since Dark Ideation is actually good for us, because we are a mana-based build, we can actually take Dark Ideation and Unspeakable Gifts in the back, which makes it a very cheap cluster, and we can just put the points in there and benefit from them. It also allows us to get 2 extra sockets, which allow us to get the mandatory Searing Purity, Flame, and Flesh. This allows us to turn 90% of chaos damage into elemental damage, 45 lightning, 45 fire, which of course works really well with the elemental damage taken on hit. So we only ever take roughly 10% chaos damage. So combine that with Energy Shield Mastery and the fact that we have a recoup on the mana and Ivory Tower. Energy Shield pretty much disappears once you are capped, and you don't really feel it, and you can actually recoup on it once you have your absorption stacks to 12. That's kind of how that whole system works. So yes, mandatory, and they're not cheap these days anymore. I'm not sure what's happening with the economy regarding the Flame Flesh, but my god. Unnatural Calm, just more Energy Shield, also another Energy Shield Mastery. This helps us not getting stunned all the time because we are low life. So this is kind of mandatory if you don't want to hate yourself. We pick up the Disciple of the Forbidden because we are charge stackers with the charge mastery for damage. We pick up a little bit of life and energy, life and elemental resistance. You don't have to take this. You could inspect this if you are still low on points. We also pick up Deep Thoughts for more mana. This allows us to pick up a mana mastery. Since we're constantly using skills, and I don't want to get into a position where I don't have mana and then I die, I picked up a chance to recover of mana when you use a skill, and we're constantly using skills, right? We're casting quite quickly, so this is constantly going off. Just quality of life. We pick up Infused Flesh as well for the life recoup with a little bit of regen, just to help smooth out the first like 2-3 seconds of recoup before it starts to really kick in. You could also unspec this. It's not necessary. It's just a quality of life thing that is not mandatory. It doesn't make you tankier. It just makes the build feel slightly better with that vitality aspect we have. Instability, power charge. We also have a That Which Was Taken. I'm very happy with this one. We have a little bit of Trickster Recovery, which smooths out the build during mapping. Effective Curses, because we do have Despair. More area of effect for power charge. It's another 48 right there in your face. As well as, of course, the Hierophant. Maximum mana as extra maximum energy shield. It's perfect. I love this jewel. Very happy I was able to get it. Yes, we also would want to pick up Arcane Guarding. That's going to be my next level if I do indeed level on this character. Just because of the extra energy shield, since we have such a nice Malachized loop. You know, it's a lot of energy shield right there. And we maybe even be able to pick up a mastery for crit multi right here on that last one. 1% of extra crit multi. Maybe that's pretty good. Who knows? That's kind of my plan. I'm not sure if it's going to be the best, but that's the one I'm doing. Down here, we have some Purity of Flesh, more life and Chaos Res, with Energy Shield on top of some flat life, obviously, just value. Sovereignty helps us with the reservation for mana, as well as 20% increased life reservation, efficiency of skills, which allows us with a Arrogance 2120 to get a decent sized life pullback, which is greater than the amount we have required for casting. So there you go. That is mandatory if you want to use your skill. We do pick up Arcane Capacitator and another Mana Mastery. 10% of damage taken recouped as mana. Combine that with the Helm recoup and you're pretty much always full mana unless you're being drained by an Arch Nemesis mod, which is very, very comfy. And all the Arcane Surge effects here are great, especially since we're constantly having Arcane Surge active due to Mana Bond being triggered by a cast when damage taken when we hurt ourselves with Forbidden Rite of Soul Sacrifice. It's all connected. Inner Conviction is brought to us by a wonderful Militant Faith. I decided to go with Non-Curse Aura and Elemental Res. You can also go with defenses from your shield. That's also pretty good for flat energy. I prefer Non-Curses because I have several auras. Overcharge, Endurance, as well as Faith and Steel, which allow us to get physical damage from hits taken as chaos damage. And since we have such wonderful defense against chaos, this helps us deal with a lot of the physical damage we take as well. Speaking of physical damage, you can also go for more corruptions right here that convert physical damage into elemental damage, which of course would help us then recoup that through Searing Purity. So you have some options and some variations, but they are very expensive, so it's not like you can just kind of willy-nilly test them. But this is the tree that I'm going with right now at level 94. Perhaps there are ways to optimize this. Maybe you see the path forward. But this is what I've got, and hopefully this inspires you to perhaps make your own path. And then tell me about it so I can improve my build. Have a good rest of the weekend. Thank you so much for hanging. Leave a like on the video. Go forth. And I'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much. I'm out.